All right. Hi, Hive Mind. My name's Magda. I'm here with Dr. Jason Graham. Thanks for being here. This is our very first live Q&A. We're going to be doing these at least once a month, hopefully more. We're glad you're here to hang out with us. Quick housekeeping before we start. For those folks just joining in, there's going to be a short delay on the stream, which is totally normal. So if it takes a beat for us to get to your question, that is just a lag. Definitely keep them coming. We were going to try to answer everyone's question today. And if we don't answer them here, we're definitely going to answer them in our replays afterwards or in our newsletter. The whole point today is your questions. So please drop them in the comments anytime. If you sent one in ahead of time, we've also got those queued up as well. We're recording this. So if you do have to drop off, the replay will be right here in the group after this. And we're also going to send it in the newsletter, which you're all subscribed to by nature of being in this group afterward. And I just ask that everyone keeps it friendly. There's folks here that are running their first hive to people who have been doing this for decades. So no question is too basic. And that's the housekeeping. Let's hand it over to Jason, who is going to give us a short presentation, introduce himself, and why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, and also we'll get started into your presentation, and then we'll go into questions just so everyone's aware. We're going to do a short 10-minute chat, give everyone kind of an overview about colony splits, maybe answer some basic FAQs if those are top of mind, and then we can dive into more specifics.
Awesome. Thank you, Magda. So welcome, everyone. I'm Dr. J. I went to University of Delaware, where I first started working with bees about almost 25 years ago. And so I've been working with bees for about 25 years. Have went to University of Florida, where I worked in the honeybee research and extension lab. I've been mentoring beekeepers and working with beekeeping associations ever since. I've done beekeeping in Florida, Hawaii, California, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware. So a few different places around the country. And I'm happy to share with you all what I've learned along the way regarding splits today. So you go on to the presentation now, move on to this next slide. So right now is kind of perfect timing when it's swarm season, maybe depending on where you live a couple weeks ago or a couple weeks into the future is kind of the really best time to split your hive. Because it's swarm season, this is when the colony has this natural drive to reproduce. And so harnessing that and being able to double your hives is great. The flowers are starting to bloom. Maybe you have a lot of rains in your area right now. And after that, the flowers are going to bloom and you're going to have a nice nectar flow. So that'll help to support your your split. And because it's swarming is a natural tendency, a split is kind of mimicking this swarm and reducing the chance that your bees will swarm later. So we can move on to the next slide. So you want to be able to tell if your colony is ready. So you want to make sure that you have plenty of brood and that your colony has enough drawn comb and resources to support both colonies. So you're going to basically be taking part of the mother colony and putting it into the daughter colony. So you want to make sure that you have eggs. You'd like to be able to find the queen if possible. So we'll talk about all that in a second. There are some false alarms that you think your colony might be ready to swarm or be split. So if you're looking on the frames for queen cells or supersedure cells, sometimes there's little queen cups that actually don't get filled in, or an egg placed in those queen cells. And so there can be kind of these dummy cells. And so sometimes it looks like it's a drone brood, or down towards the bottom of the drone brood, you think that maybe you have some queen cells. So there's other false alarms to look for as well. You want to just observe with patience, and when your hive seems ready, so it has all the resources that it needs, has plenty of plenty of pollen, plenty of nectar, capped brood, uncapped brood, then you're ready to go. Okay, next slide. So finding the queen, this is a tough one. Sometimes it can be difficult to find a queen in a colony. Nice thing about with the Primal Beehive is you're only really looking at 7 frames, 7 to 8 frames, and usually you'll find her on the middle 3 to 4 frames. So when I'm looking for the queen, I usually take out the first frame or two that doesn't, that either doesn't have a lot of brood on it, or it's, mostly honey, or the follower board, just give myself some room. And then I move the frames along and pull out kind of the middle 1 or 2. I separate them so that the frames, so that when I draw my frame up, I'm not rolling the queen. And I'm looking for the queen in an area where there's capped brood. Around that, there's uncapped brood, and around that, there's eggs and larvae. So you're going to be trying to look for eggs, find the queen. She should be somewhere around those eggs, and she'll have several attendants with her. She's going to have a longer abdomen. Her wings are going to look shorter in proportion to her body compared to the workers. So those are just some good cues. If you can't find the queen, you can replace with the queen. So you can get 2 queens, one for the mother colony and one for the daughter colony. And that really helps to give you some insurance. Okay, next. So you have these 2 colonies, right? You have your mother colony. This is the one that's donating a frame or 2 of eggs and brood food and capped brood, uncapped brood. You may want to put the queen in there, or you may want to leave her in the daughter colony. And then you're going to hope that the one that you moved the eggs into becomes a walk-away split, where the nurse bees in that colony will be able to turn the eggs or young larvae into queen cups and queen cells and begin reproducing that colony. So the mother colony, you're going to want to watch that if you removed the queen from that, to see that they replace the queen. And so if you have the by doing the first method, where you move the queen from the mother colony into the daughter colony, you need to make sure that the mother colony is able to reproduce that queen. So you're going to have to go back in either case, and kind of look to see that the queen is laying within that the queen has been developed within about 14 to 21 days. You'll see those queen cells in the mother colony. Okay, next. And then you're going to also want to feed both colonies, make sure that they stay strong as they're going, as they're developing. They now need to, because they have the frames of capped brood, they're going to have a lot of workers coming out, making room for the queen to lay. And it's not like they're starting from scratch like they were when you first put your foundation in and they had to draw it all out. So things should speed up pretty quickly. Just continue making sure that they have plenty of room. You're going to want to have your follower board, use your follower board to divide off space in some cases. In other cases, you're going to have, if you move over 3 to 4 frames, then you may not need to have the follower board to make the volume smaller that the bees need to work with and focus on. Okay, next. Okay, so now I just wanted to open it up for questions. And this is my email address below, jason@primalbee.com, our website, primalbee.com. And we also have office hours twice a week, where you can hop on and ask any questions you have about other topics as well. So Hope to see you and hear from you. And does anyone have any questions online now? Magda, I'm sorry, you're muted. I can't hear you.
Sorry about that. We have a few questions coming in really quick, Jason. We can hear you great. Do you mind trying to toggle your video on and off just because your video's frozen, but you sound great.
Sure.
That was an awesome presentation. Thank you for that. We have one question coming in from someone in New Jersey who's wondering if, we'll see if that works. If not, it's all good. We can hear you great. So
Okay.
Is it too late to put a super on? He currently lives in New Jersey.
Is it too late to put a super on? No, and actually, that's kind of one of the things you're going to consider. So if you're going to do a split, it really has to do with your goals. So if you want to increase the number of bees, then you want to do a split. If you want to increase your honey production, then you want to put a super on. And if you just want to do what's best for the bees, it's kind of, I guess you would put the supers on as well, right? Because you're going to just try to give them as much resources as they can to continue to go. Doing a split can be a little bit risky sometimes for both the mother and the daughter colony. But getting back to your question about putting a super on in New Jersey right now, I think it's probably a great time. You want to make sure that you have in the nest box, it's pretty fully developed. So 70% of the frames are drawn out. You have food for the bees down there, for the brood down there. It's really good to have the honey shoulder at the top of the frames. This produces like a barrier that the queen doesn't like to walk across. So it'll work as kind of a biological queen excluders to keep her from going up and laying eggs in the super. And so, yeah, you want to take your feeder lid off and put the super right on top. Hope that answers your question. Now's a great time. I would continue putting supers on as they build up. If the super is about 70% full, then you'd put another super on, or what you could do is checkerboard in frames and remove frames as they become honey bound, and you don't need to always go vertical. You can kind of pull the frames out.
Awesome. And if you have still remaining questions, feel free to throw them in the comments and we can follow up on that. I'm going to pop one up here on the screen. So this is a newbie who posted in our group. Is wondering, she has 3 hives coming, so she will be ready to split. Can she put her nuke below the main area to get the bees to draw a comb upwards?
It's right now we're talking about this, as a possibility. We've tested this in hives before. It can be a bit tricky. You really need a second top ring in order to do this. So you would put a top ring on the bottom board, and then on top of that, the super, which you can put in the 5 frames of, from a nuke, along with maybe a couple other frames that have already been drawn out, or frames of brood if you happen to have them. And then the nest box on top of that super. And this is one way that folks have been able to get the bees from Langstroth frames kind of up into, but it could take a while. The bees do need to kind of draw out that large, there's large nest frames, and when they have frames that are already drawn out for them and the queen is using them, then sometimes she tends to stay on what she's used to. So if that helps.
Yeah. Great. Another one here. How many splits can you make from one hive?
So 1 frame is equal to about 3 deep frames. A nuke is 5 frames, 5 deep frames. So with 2 Primal Bee frames, you already have more than a nuke's worth of bees, more than a nuke's worth of brood. So really you could take it's an 8-frame colony. If you aren't using your follower board anymore and you've made it the follower board into your 8th frame, then you could potentially have 2 frames that you leave behind for the queen. If you may want to, because we're dividing this up as many splits as we could possibly make, you may want to get extra queens too, just to increase the likelihood that they'll be successful. But you could put 2 frames into each colony. You could possibly make 4 splits from 1 colony. So it's pretty exciting. They can grow quick.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great. This is a follow-up actually to the question from the person who lives in New Jersey regarding nectar flow. He mentioned that they may be entering a dearth. They're heavily on our clover right now. What about a queen excluder below the super?
I'm sorry, you broke up there a little bit, Magda. Can you repeat that?
Okay, sorry. I can actually throw this up here. This was from the folks, or the person who's from New Jersey. Let me just throw this up
Maybe
there.
entering a dearth. They're heavily on our clover right now. What about a queen excluder below the super? So we have tested queen excluders, and we find that a lot of times they just get in the way of both the beekeeper and the bees. Sometimes we found bees stuck in going through the holes in the queen excluder. We've tested plastic and metal. The metals usually doesn't fit properly, so you'd have to trim a plastic entrance reducer if you wanted to give this a try yourself. But really, sometimes we saw also it really slowed things down. So the bees didn't really get up into the super and produce a lot of comb and as quickly as they did when they had full access. The best queen excluder that you can have are those shoulders of honey at the top of the nest frames in the nest box. This is going to be the best way to kind of prevent her from going up. Sometimes your nest frame will get so completely full of brood that they don't have that shoulder of honey at the top. And in those cases, what I would do is put a super on with a couple frames that are already honey bound above that area, so that the queen, we have this barrier now, and the queen is less likely to come up into the super. It's usually easier if she, without having a queen excluder on, if she does get up there, we just try to find her as quickly as we can, and then move her down, and then remove that frame that she started putting brood on, so we're taking that temptation away for her to go back up. And usually that resolves the problem, but it's pretty rare that she goes up.
Got it. That's very clever. Awesome. This is another question from someone asking, after split, does the daughter hive have to be separated a good distance from the mother hive to prevent drift? Or is there a way to just get only nurse bees on the comb transferred? And they also added that they've done this in their Langstroth using a queen excluder before.
Okay, great. Thanks. Yeah. So the splits can happen right next to each other. Sometimes it's best to have the entrances facing opposite directions to kind of help reduce the drift if you are worried about that. Another thing you can do is watch to see the drift settle, right? So whether you have one colony, maybe the mother colony ended up losing a lot of bees to the daughter colony, or vice versa. You can wait until it's a very a nice day and the bees are getting ready to go out. And before they go out, kind of earlier in the morning, you can switch the footprints of those 2 hives. So you could pick up the mother hive and put it where the daughter was, and the daughter where the mother was. And just that, 1 day's worth of foragers going out and returning to, the opposite hive can balance things back out. And then the other part of the question, is there a way to get only nurse bees onto the comb transferred? So the nurse bees are mostly just going to be whatever's on the brood. So you're looking for those frames of brood from the mother colony that have young larvae and uncapped brood. All those nurse bees will be tending those, and so that's the best place to come for to take the nurse bees from.
Great. Awesome. Hopefully that answers the question too. And again, if you have follow-up questions, please post them in the chat. Another good one here. My bees are building comb kind of spotty on the frames. Any suggestions for them to fill out the frames better? The brood area is great, mostly the honey areas. This is a little bit adjacent to what we're talking about, but I thought it was a great question to throw in there.
Sure, thank you. Trying to get them to draw out more brood is it, sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah. My bees are building comb kind of spotty on the frames. Any suggestions for them to fill out the frames better? The brood area is great, but mostly the honey areas.
Okay, so yeah, sometimes you'll have the honey areas. They're maybe building wonky comb or they're building comb out just a little bit in patchy areas. If you have when you go into the hive, if you have burr comb, so this is the kind of the comb that's going to be on top of the frames, I would try to scrape some of that off. Anywhere where you have honeycomb that's growing vertical off the off of the foundation, and going the wrong way, like it's bridge comb, it's connecting two pieces of foundation together. You could go in and trim that off, and then you could spread it across the areas where you want the bees to start drawing out the wax. And so it's a way of kind of taking from areas where they have too much comb and adding it to the areas where you want it to be drawn out. And pushing the frames together is helpful at the top and at the bottom to reduce the wonky comb or the bridge comb, because it's all space related. The bees need about 3/8 of an inch to walk in between the alleys, and if they have more than that, they're just going to try to fill that with strange comb.
Got it. Hopefully that answers the question for the person in the chat. Let me know if that helps. This is another question. It's a bit longer. I'm going to put it up on the screen as well. Just shorten it a bit here. This came from someone who commented on one of our posts that we created to promote our live. So he kept the follower board as our 8th frame, and the bees were heavily clinging on the wall behind the follower board. So we just put in the 8th frame, and then the thing that he added as the second part of this question was they were very healthy frames and added a honey super about a week ago, and they are beginning to build that out. How will we know when to split? I think you might have answered this question throughout your presentation, but I think this is a good specific use case that we can maybe speak to.
Yeah, so the kind of deciding on whether to put a honey super on or make a split, this is really kind of your goals, right? If you want to try to duplicate your number of hives in your apiary, perfect time to split. If you want to focus on honey production, then good time to add a super. But if you do a split, then you might not be adding a super right away on either of the mother or the daughter colonies, because they're going to have to rebound, right, from this split. So you're taking a 8-frame colony and turning it into maybe 2 4-frame colonies. Now these 4-frame colonies have to build back up to be 8-frame colonies, or before you can put the super on. So that's kind of the trade-off. And it really depends, with the supers going on, if you have a good nectar flow and if the bottom seems well developed, the nursery is well developed. That's really the best time to put a super on, so that they're able to take advantage of the resources in their environment. Mm-hmm.
Great. This is a great question, I think, just in terms of frame compatibility and hive design, that I think we get a lot, and I'd love for you to chat through, Jason. It's quite long, so I'm going to just read it and try and get as much as I can on the screen. But this customer mentioned that he just checked his hive after a week and discovered 6 queen cells right in the middle of the frames. He says it seems like they're planning to supersede the current queen, which is surprising since she's been so productive. The colony expanded from just a few frames to filling the entire box in only a couple of months. He was planning to split the hive, but he's run out of frames and mentions that's definitely one of the main drawbacks he thinks of the hive design, because the lack of compatibility with existing standard frames makes scaling up a bit of a challenge. Do you have any suggestions or recommendations for someone maybe in a similar situation?
Sure, sure. And actually, so um, individual frames, or I think four packs of frames, can be purchased, for, so you have those extra frames to go ahead and put in. So, that's one way that you can kind of scale. You don't have to buy a whole new kit to get more frames. So any of these individual parts, if you, want another bottom board that you can swap in and swap out, or something along those lines, then just reach out to us, Jason at Primal Bee or info@primalbee.com. And we can send you, so we don't have those individual parts available online. But if you email us and say that you'd like them, then we have a price list for each of those, so we could kind of get that out to you as you need it. So you could get just individual frames. And the other parts of that question, I was trying to see if I can see it here, actually, but I've run out of frames. Drawback of that is the compatibility with existing standard frames. And so, yeah, it's one of those things, where you can use the Langstroth frames for the supers, and so in that way it's compatible. So you're not kind of, I guess, losing out completely, but you get so much benefit from these long nest frames that I think it's worth the trade.
Yeah, awesome. I'm not seeing any more questions. Oh, there's a new question. Okay.
I see one from Edson as well. How do you know if your split has failed, and what do you do about it? So this is a good one. So if you have, you go into your daughter colony and you're seeing that the queen hasn't started laying in there, or the bees haven't drawn out some of the wax in there, the colony's seeming to dwindle a bit, you could go into the mother colony if that's stronger. And this is kind of one of the benefits of having two hives, is that now you can go back to the mother colony and you can look and see how that's doing. Usually one colony will be doing better than the other. What you can do is from the colony that's stronger, you could pull up a frame and shake a frame of brood and shake all the bees off of it, and then put that into the colony that's not doing as well. And that extra, boost from a few thousand workers can help to turn that around. And you also, if there's eggs on there, you could give them another try to raise a new queen if they weren't able to raise the queen the first time. Another way that if it's seeming that it's failing, then you could introduce a queen, because that will help right away, right? A mated queen, you want to make sure that you're introducing her in a queen cage with a candy cork, so that, she's accepted, same as you would with a package or something like that. So whenever she's accepted by the colony, you want to make sure that she gets out and starts laying. But adding a queen can kind of help turn that around. If it totally fails, and your colony, maybe the bees that from the daughter colony all drifted back to the mother colony. Maybe the queen didn't make it over into the daughter colony, and so everything kind of went back to one spot. You could give them a little while. I would probably give them a break, for a few weeks, and then consider doing the split again.
Got it. It's a great question. And I have another one related to that I'll ask after Frank's question here. But Frank asks, I plan to add one primal hive to the one I have. When is the best time of year to split?
So usually spring is the best time to split when it's starting to warm up in your area and the flowers are starting to bloom. That's really the best time to split. I So here in California, I typically split in April or May if I had a really strong colonies coming out of the winter. Or I may, wait and split in June to July if the colony is coming out of winter. I wanted to give them a little more time to build back up. And then, another good time to split might be in the fall when they're getting ready to overwinter. So it gives a nice brood break kind of as they're going into winter, and it'll, give the queen an area to lay brood into the new colony, and you can close it up and you're feeding, so that's another good time in the Primal Beehive.
Related to Aton's question, I think this is one that a lot of beginner beekeepers ask, and it's kind of related to the mother-daughter question, but how do you stop when you split from flying back to the old hive? This is something I saw on Reddit a lot as well in beginner beekeeper threads. If you have any recommendations, especially related to Primal Beehive setups and how you talk about like where to place hives and how to ensure that they're set up properly.
Yeah, so aiming the entrances in opposite directions is one good way to reduce drift. Staggering the hives. So if you have multiple hives on the same hive stand, say 3 or 4 hives in the same hive stand or in a row, then having them staggered so one is forward about 2 feet and the other's set back about 2 feet, and alternating this pattern can also help reduce drift. We have some decals that we're going to be sharing soon that you can put on your hive that has a symbol on it. Bees can see different types of shapes, so they can see, for instance, a circle differently than a square or a triangle. And so putting these different shapes in front of the entrances can help the bees to recognize that that's their entrance and reduce this drift all the way around, whether you're talking about drift from splits or just natural drift that can happen, or robbing in the hive. So those are some tools that you can use.
Awesome. Great.
Oh, sorry. One other thing, and setting them apart does help, so setting the hives apart from each other, it's not always necessary, but it can be helpful to have them spaced further away from each other to reduce that chance of drift back.
Got it. How far away would you say you would place them apart? Like what's minimum? Maybe?
Ideally, I would try to set them about 6 feet apart at the minimum. And, probably if I had the room, maybe like, basically if you're going 3 feet or more away, then the bees have a less chance of drifting back. So the further you can get, 6 feet is better, 9 feet is even better, but from the original colony.
Cool. Got it. David just asked, you mentioned feeding both hives after a split. What and how much and how often? It's on the screen as well.
So we recommend a 4-to-1 sugar solution. And so this is because it reduces the amount of excess water that'll get into the hive. And so with a 1-to-1 solution, where you're going to have a lot more moisture they're basically taking that 1-to-1 as a nectar, and they have to brush it in different areas of the hive and let it evaporate off, so it becomes the consistency of a 4-to-1, or the moisture content of a 4-to-1, so that they can start storing and using that. So we do a 4-to-1 mixture. Basically take a mason jar and fill it 4/5 of the way with sugar, add hot water just under boiling, around 200 degrees Fahrenheit, and then put the cap on that mason jar and shake it up really good. It'll reduce the amount of volume of syrup in the jar as the sugar dissolves, and then you add more hot water, and so this kind of reconstitutes that syrup and makes it so that it's not going to crystallize later on you. So close that up and shake it again before you put it on the hive. Let it cool down slightly. It should turn a transparent yellow color. And happy to provide more instructions for this. We have this on usage guides, kind of how to make this syrup. You also may want to provide a bit of pollen, depending on how much was available to both colonies, the mother and the daughter colonies, when you did the split. So if you saw that they had a lot of nectar stored, or honey, but they didn't have much pollen, now's a good time to add a pollen patty, because they're going to want that protein to be able to develop a lot of brood.
That's great. Yeah, and that's a good call out, actually. We do have a bunch of technical user guides that are also more broadly beekeeping advice on our site. And that whole guide system is actually getting a big upgrade soon. So if you have any questions around any of this, including questions that are just broadly related to beekeeping, definitely check out our user guides. What is your preferred method of splitting, Jason?
So my preferred method is to move take my mother colony, and I find the queen, and I'm going to want to move the queen into the daughter colony. And usually I'm going to move her over on a frame of brood, in a primal beehive, with one frame that's got capped brood, uncapped brood, eggs, larvae, and then another frame that has food, so I have some pollen, some nectar. It could also have brood on it too, but just make sure that I'm giving them those, the brood, the food, and also some room to grow. So now this queen is going to go over to the new colony. The colony left behind didn't sacrifice too many frames, like about 3 frames. And then they have these other 7 frames, of brood, and they're, still pretty strong. I'm going to let them be the ones to work on making a new queen. And I'm going to check it, every 7 days, about every, I want to look, I'm going to be looking for queen cells. And 14 days later, I should be able to see that the queen cell has been capped and, the queen is developing. And if all looks good, then great. But if not, now I can introduce a queen, or go back to that old colony or the new colony and pull some some queen cells from that if they've started to make them there.
Great. That's awesome. We should get a video of that at some point.
Yeah.
Awesome. This is another question from David, I believe. When is it too late to split?
So I think the timing with splitting, you want to make sure that you have your temperatures outside are good enough to support the bees to be able to take this stress, right? We're moving them into a new colony, but you want to be able to do this on a nice day where it's above 50 degrees, so if it's starting to get, so the temperatures are going down below 50, then, that's probably getting a bit too late to do a split. If your daytime temps, sometimes it'll be, a beautiful warm day, and then at night it'll drop down. And so kind of keeping that into consideration too, when you open a colony up, it's going to take a little bit for them to kind of reset the thermostat in there. It's really geographic dependent, right? So, and whatever your climate's like too, what your nectar flows are like, I would try to, maybe catch the last nectar flow in fall, would be the best time to, for your cutoff of when to make a split. After that, I'm really just letting them bulk up in the hive as it starts to get cold out. Hope that helps.
Is there a specific temperature threshold that you recommend, Jason, in that sense?
Yeah, ideally 60 degrees, when my averages are about 60 degrees, that's kind of the ideal temperatures for me. That's a bit conservative. I think you could still get away with a split at 50 degrees, or even lower if you felt like it was necessary. But I think to be safe, 60 degrees Fahrenheit is a good average temp.
Great. Yeah, that's helpful. Do you need to confirm that you have queen cells before you split?
No, you don't. It can be helpful. If you have queen cells, then that's very easy. They've already got everything packed up in the U-Haul for you. Basically, you would just take that frame out and with the queen cells on it, and you got everything you need for a split right there. But you don't necessarily need to have queen cells before you split, right? When you're doing this split, you're taking the queen away, and all the bees have are eggs and larvae, these nurse bees, and they don't have a queen. They don't have the pheromones from the queen, and they go into this emergency queen rearing mode, and they'll take one of the worker eggs and they'll feed it royal jelly only and turn that into a queen. And so this, making this split is going to make the queen cells, or removing the queen from this portion of the colony is going to make the queen cells. So you don't necessarily have to have them before, but if you do, it's nice.
Yeah, awesome. Is there a common piece of splitting advice that is overblown or actually wrong? This is a little bit of a spicy question.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Is there a common piece of splitting that's overblown or actually wrong? Nothing comes to mind is actually wrong. I feel like there's different situations for lots of things, or overblown. Maybe I think a revelation really for me with splitting was just that with the Primal Beehive that you could get so many more splits out of a colony. So a split is really right now, I think in most beekeepers' minds, we think of a 10 frame Langstroth box. And in order to make a split from a 10 frame Langstroth box, we need 5 frames of five frames from that would make one colony, and the other 5 would make the other. So we're only getting 2 colonies from each split. Mm-hmm. With this, being able to get up to 4 colonies from each split is pretty amazing. So I think that's something that's maybe not overblown or actually wrong, but like kind of it's something new to understand. It's possible, right? So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Do you think you can split a hive to stop swarming? Is that a common connection?
Okay. Yeah, it is. So basically a split is an artificial swarm. So the swarm is the colony's way of reproducing at the colony level. So the colony gets super powerful and strong, and all the cues are there, and the colony says, hey, it's time to make a new colony somewhere else. So they raise a second queen or several queens inside there, and the old queen will leave with half the bees, or the new queen will leave with half the bees. And in either situation, they've successfully done what that colony set out to do. So the swarming is such a natural behavior. By doing this artificial split, or the artificial swarm, in the sense of a split, we're taking half those bees and the queen and putting them somewhere else, and then they have to either make a queen or we give them a queen for the old place. And so it's the same idea as a swarm. It's just the beekeepers doing this, and so it's
right.
intervening. Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. This is a question from John. How can you tell that the area in which you live is going through a dearth, and how do the bees behave?
So dearths can happen, for lots of different reasons. Could be weather related. Maybe there wasn't enough rain. Maybe there was too much rain. Maybe the rain knocked the pollen off the flowers, or, lots of different things can happen. And so there are general kind of curves you can follow, as far as what the nectar flow is in your area, just from talking to other beekeepers and hearing kind of when they experienced nectar flows last year or the year before, so there's this way of kind of looking at that and trying to predict what the nectar flows are going to happen. Looking in your own hives, when you see the frames are wet, then that's a really good signal that you have a nectar flow happening. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's a dearth if that's not going on, but it's helpful, to kind of, when you can pull a frame out and kind of give it a little shake and see some nectar splash out, then that's a good sign that you're in a nectar flow. I wouldn't recommend doing that on the brood frames, but when you have your honey supers on, it's kind of a good way to pull it up and just, you can see how liquid the nectar is by giving it a little snap. There are some tools online, that help you to find what forage is in your area. There are different maps. So basically, if you just kind of go in and search nectar flow near me, then you can find different. There's Honeybee Net has a honeybeenet.gov. So they have a honeybee forage map, which provides information across the country for where what the timing is. There's also an app called iNaturalist, and so there you can kind of track what flowers are blooming. So if you happen to see a flower that's blooming and has a bee on it, and get a picture of that, you can identify what that flower is, and then kind of follow that flower's bloom cycle to help you understand what resources you have locally that are helping the bees.
Yeah, ever since you showed me iNaturalist, it's such a cool website. This is another question from David. With all the space the queen has to lay, how common are swarms in a primal hive?
So I think there's less of a chance. There's a lot of different reasons why a colony would swarm. The main ones being that if the colony runs out of room, then they feel that they need to spend half the population somewhere else so that they continue to grow. So there's less chance of them running out of room in a primal beehive. It's basically 3 deeps, that they have for her to continue to lay and for them to grow. And by the time she's, filled up one frame, another frame has emerging brood that she can go and lay eggs in those cells. So there's less of a reason for her to swarm because she's running out of room, but there could be more of a reason for her to swarm because it's gotten such a strong colony, right? There's so many bees in the colony. They're super successful. This in itself could be a cue for the bees to swarm because they're doing great. So that's I think it's easier to find swarm cells or queen cells when you're doing inspection, and because you're only looking at 7 or 8 frames, to be able to find these things rather than looking at 8 frames on one super and another 8 frames in another super and another 8 frames in another super to try to find queen cells. It's much easier to detect them in a primal beehive, in my opinion. So
Great.
Hope that helps.
Awesome. Don't see any more questions right now. We are running up on our final 10 minutes here. So if anyone has any last minute questions, please throw them in the chat. Jason, do you have any questions that have come up through our office hours that or tend to come up a lot when you talk about splits with new beekeepers or experienced hobbyists that are fairly common or that you tend to encounter a lot, especially now with Primal Beehives?
So I think maybe one interesting use case that I didn't chat about yet with that has to do with swarms is there was a beekeeper that wanted to sell nukes. And so he's trying to figure out how to do this with a primal beehive. And so it's a little off topic from swarms, or sorry, from splits, but it's kind of similar
Yeah.
idea. So basically, they really wanted to sell these splits in Langstroth nukes, and so they kind of made like a nuke farm by taking the nest box, the Primal Bee nest box, and reducing the amount of space in that nest box where the queen had to lay. So they used extra follower boards. So instead of using just the one follower board, and if you want more follower boards, you can also reach out to us and we can send just follower boards. So, we sent him four extra follower boards, and he put these into the nest box in four of the frames, and just leaving three or so frames in that the queen could lay on to try to drive her up into the super and lay on the frames in the super. Then when she finished laying uncapped brood on a super frame, then he would use those frames to put the eggs into a nuke and get it started as a walk-away split. So he would just go in and harvest, like make sure he didn't take the queen out, leave her in the super. And then when he was done with, making these types of splits or of nukes, then he found the queen and put her back down in the nest box and, got her laying back down there again by adding in more frame, those frames back in that had drawn comb or just blank foundation that needed to be drawn out back down instead of the follower boards.
That's super great. Yeah.
Kind of interesting. There's lots of different tools and ways you can work with the hives to accomplish whatever goal you may have. So it's really neat that it has the bit of flexibility, and we're, I think, still learning different ways to use the hive.
Yeah, I think that's a good call out too, is that, there's like the rules, but there's also, you can definitely come up with more creative ways to sort of put things together that work for you. Yeah, that's awesome. This is a question that I actually got on LinkedIn, but walk-away split versus dropping in a mated queen versus giving them a queen cell. When do you reach for each, and what's the trade-off?
So walk-away split, I think, is if I know where the queen is and I'm able to find her very easy, and I see eggs, so I'm able to separate the queen from the eggs and have plenty of nurse bees to, for each. It's super easy. I like it because I don't have to have an extra queen. All I have to have is the equipment and the strong colony to be able to do that split. Dropping in a mated queen is nice because as soon as she emerges, she's ready to start laying. So this can be kind of a quicker solution. With a walk-away split, you got to wait for the queen to develop, and then the queen to mate, and then the queen to come back and start producing eggs. And a lot could go wrong in that time of her, maybe she, flies out and gets eaten by a bird. And now the bees are, but I guess so there's a lot more risk there for a walk-away split compared to adding in a mated queen. As soon as you add in a mated queen and she's accepted by the colony, then she can start laying pretty much within a couple of days. And then giving them a queen cell. So this is kind of between those two, I would say. When you give them a queen cell, it's going to be faster than a walk-away split because it's already developed. That egg is already developed into a pupa, and the queens are, ready when they hatch out, but they still have to go on a mating flight. And sometimes this could take a week or two, depending on the conditions in your area. If it's, they won't go out and try to mate if it's too windy, or if it's, too rainy, they're waiting for, a nice sunny day to go out. And they need to also have drone congregation areas somewhere nearby for them to go and mate in, and then come back. And, then it usually can take a couple of days for them to start laying eggs too. So I would say walk away would be fastest, but probably most risky. Dropping in a mated queen would be least amount of risk. And, walk away split would be slower, right? Like it would be easier for you, but it would be slower for that actual development for the queen to happen. Dropping in a mated queen, you have to get a queen, so it's a little bit more expensive, but they can start laying right away. So this is faster for the bees. And then giving them a queen cell is kind of somewhere in between.
Right. Awesome. No, that's great. This is a great place to land, I think.
Yeah.
So we're right about at time, but this was awesome. Thank you so much, Jason. You're getting some great praise in the comments as well. And thanks everyone for being such awesome participants. We got some amazing questions, and we'll definitely be posting this, as I mentioned, replay in the group either today or tomorrow morning. And we're going to be doing more of these every month. So definitely keep an eye out. If there's a topic you want us to cover next, drop that in the comments. That'll help us pick the next one. But in the meantime, thank you for joining us today. And thanks so much, Jason.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Great to see you all. All the best.